outlook on life and a more positive look on themselves and their self-belief.
Mhm.
So, whether it's exercise, whether it's meditation, whatever that positive habit becomes, in my own personal journey, I always tell myself, commit to it for 30 days.
Yeah.
If it doesn't change your life after 30 days, then it's not impactful for you. It doesn't mean it's not going to be impactful for somebody else. Um, but I feel the same thing, whether it's drinking, smoking, eating fast food, pick a bad habit, right? If you do it routinely for 30 days, it becomes a habit, right? And
Yeah.
it's just as easy to commit yourself to good habits as it is to bad habits.
Let's learn how our next guest gets up, dress up, and show up on purpose. Enjoy the episode. Hello, morning enthusiasts. Welcome to the Best Morning Routine Ever podcast. I am your host, Dr. Lunid, and today I have the honor of introducing a very special guest to the show, Bret Davis. Now, Bret is a best-selling author, and his journey is marked by resilience, growth, and commitment to personal development. And I'm really excited to have him on here because he has almost pulled himself up by the bootstraps, right? He has risen from door-to-door salesman to now executive role in the medical field. Now, his book, Bretisms, we're going to talk about because it really focuses on how to have less anxiety and be more confident, and his philosophy around that and all the lessons he's actually acquired over the years. So I'm really, really excited to have him on board. So with no further ado, Bret, welcome to the show.
Thank you, doctor. I appreciate it. And I appreciate you having me on.
Of course, it's an honor to have you. We have so much to talk about, so much to learn about Bretism. But first, let's talk about your journey to what led you here so far.
Yeah. So, really my journey started in kind of developing these daily or morning philosophies, if you will, to help, create confidence in myself and others really at a young age. So I had a unique upbringing. My father was a football coach, and he started out as a kind of an eighth grade, middle school football coach, and rose all the way to a career in the NFL. Spent over 20 years as a coach and an executive in the National Football League. So, growing up, I was raised around just some really strong leaders and folks with unique characteristics of leadership and confidence. And, I often tell people it wasn't that they didn't have anxiety, because we all have it, right? But they learned how to manage it and how to control it versus letting their anxiety or anxious moments control them. And, one of the things, doctor, that at an early age, I was kind of blessed with the ability to see and notice what made other people special,
Mm.
right? And I think everybody agrees, no matter where we came from or what we do for a living, we all have some unique characteristics that make us different and special. And as a young kid, I was very observant to that. And, how come these people that I'm exposed to are able to lead others and have this confidence in themselves and instill this in confidence in others. And one of the things that I really came back to time and time again was they had these daily routines or these daily philosophies that they could lean into, um, reminders, if you will,
Yeah.
for themselves and others. And through my journey, it's in the title of the book. These are adopted and modified and some original philosophies that over the years, found myself leaning on in my own personal growth. But importantly, I started sharing these with others, to help them on their journey. And really, early on, what would kind of the why behind the book is when I became a father, and I have two sons, Blake and Connor, and they're both, doing great in their own life journey. But from an early age, when they were able to have conversations and comprehend these things, I would repeat some of these philosophies to them depending on the situation. And they became known, my wife and kids kind of called them Bretisms. And my wife started a board, and they would write the Bretisms that they liked. And that's kind of where the title came from and the name came from, and kind of my way of honoring my wife Kelly and my sons Blake and Connor through the book. And then um, like most authors, I always had, three or four books going at once. I never really focused on one. And depending on my mood and what was happening in my life, I would focus on one of the different books. And really, Doctor, once kind of the push I needed to finish the book was when my dad had passed. And we were going through some of his things, and he loved to write. He was a great writer. But he never kind of finished a project and got it published. And that was the motivation that I needed. And I came back home and looked at the different books I had going, and I thought, Bretisms is closest to my heart, and it's the one that's touched the most people's lives around me. So I'm going to put focus on that. And although it had been probably 20 years in the making, I kind of focused on, took me about 18 to 24 months to really put a bow on it and finish it. And then, kind of probably the last why, if you will, that I needed was as I was a youth, lacrosse coach, football coach, you name it, with my sons, and their youth, I was exposed, and even in my own youth, I was exposed to more and more kids and families that maybe didn't have the positivity and the upbringing that I did. And I thought, if I can put these sayings out there and these daily reminders and philosophies out there to help change somebody's trajectory of not only how they look at themselves, but how they look at the world. If I can impact, two or three other people, then it's certainly worth my effort to share, these philosophies with others to help them grow in their journey. And that was kind of my why and my motivation behind finishing it. And really, when it went, I remember the day it was published, my wife was really excited. She had saw it on Amazon or Barnes and Noble or somewhere. She's like, "Oh my gosh, your book's out there." And she was so excited. And she was, "I can't believe you're not excited." And I thought, well, I thought I would be too, but it's really unique feeling to share your innermost self with the world. And how are they, and I know you've written books and done this, and I've talked to other authors about it. And I said, this is kind of everything and everybody I am to my core. And I just put it out there for the world, and I hope they like it. And when it hit number one as a bestseller, it was really a humbling and gratifying experience. And now when I get emails and notes from people that have read it or are in the process of reading it, and it's had a positive impact on them, that's just so touching. There's not words to describe it.
Yeah, it is. It takes a lot, especially when you initially publish it. And you're like, whoa, I'm exposed.
Right.
I'm exposed. The whole world knows me, knows who I am, the core of who I am. And I think that's what sells, right? The authenticity that drives your work that came in from the heart. That's what
For
drives everybody
sure.
up.
Well said. Well said.
Because we don't there's writings, a lot to choose out there. There's a lot of noise, but when it comes from that true place, that inner being guided by that inner being to produce something like that, it will take off. And as you saw, it's precisely what happens. It skyrocketed to number one best-selling author. Let's talk about some of the the principles. You mentioned what you saw, acknowledging people's talent early on, what makes them different or makes them unique. And you brought on discipline. I was thinking that when you spoke, but you said they have ways of managing anxiety. Let's talk about those that you actually collected, some of the techniques you saw.
Yeah. So one of them is about emotions, right? And and it's actually the first chapter in the book. It's, recognize your emotions, just don't let them drive,
Mhm.
right? And, that I think especially when it comes to anxiety, it's it's being able to recognize it, put a label on it, right? But don't let it drive your actions, your intentions, or even manifest itself into an emotion that becomes paralyzing to you, right? Because I think one of the big misperceptions of people that are confident and can do things that others perceive scary is, oh, they're not afraid of that. Well, that's not true, right? I've often had people say, man, if you're speaking to 1,000 people or 2,000 people or 100 people, you're no different than if you're just sitting having dinner with me. And I can't believe you don't have anxiety or nerves over that. And I said, well, I certainly do. And I think all people do in all situations. It's just I and others have been able to recognize what that fear or anxiety is, realize it's not going to kill us or cause us damage, and use techniques. Now, my personal techniques, I lean heavy on these philosophies, right? And when I get in that situation, I say to myself, okay, realize what these emotions are. Just don't let them drive. And even if it's not public speaking, I got a note from a gentleman that, had bought my book, and he was going through some very stressful things. Two of his family members were going through some really serious health issues, right? And, he was having trouble with his emotions, and he had turned to alcohol, right, to help manage his emotions. And he hasn't had a drop in the last 4 months, and he didn't even get through the first chapter of my book. And he realized that he was, instead of recognizing his emotions and dealing with his emotions, he was using a crutch or a substance to help overcome those emotions. And he said, I repeat that myself every day. I'm going to be emotional. I'm going to have to ride through all these emotions, whether it's fear, anger, hurt, pain for his loved ones. But instead of turning to a crutch, he's leaning into them, recognizing them, and becoming a better person. And now he's a better pillar for his family members who are struggling through these health issues.
Yeah, I can see that. And detaching from these emotions, right? You are not your emotions, just like you are not your thoughts, right? And
Yeah,
understanding that and actually lovingly stepping away and detaching from that so that it doesn't drive your actions now. But also something interesting happens is unconsciously those emotions or those thoughts are driving your habits, your behaviors that
for
influence
sure.
you. So
100%.
let's talk about that, some of the habits, because I know as a leader, and have you seen leadership is we have to set up the right habits, and we really have to do the deep work of like digging into the subconscious mind to make sure they're not hindering our progress or development.
For sure. So, I mean, habits are just that. And, it is, as you say, and often people recognize, people hear the word habits and they automatically think bad habits,
Yeah.
right? That's just where our brain is trained to go since we were little kids, right? Um, and I often share with folks that a good habit is just as easy to become part of your morning or daily routine as a bad habit is. And you just have to make that choice and have that discipline. And one of the reasons, that this book is 30 chapters, okay? And I talk about this in the forward of the book, that it was written and designed for you to digest one chapter a day, right? And that's why I wrote, I mean, Doctor, I probably have 100 or maybe 1,000 Brettisms, right? I could have written an encyclopedia. Um, but I didn't. I said, these are the 30 that I lean on the most. And the goal of this was that getting up and reading a chapter a day and marinating on it throughout the day becomes your habit. And then after you've gotten through the first 30, what's happening now is I'm getting emails from readers that are saying, depending on my need or my mood for the day, I know which breadism that I need to turn to for that day, right? Because each breadism deals with a different subject matter, right? Whether it's leadership, whether it's self-forgiveness, whether it's loving yourself and others, right? Depending on what that person needs for the day, they lean on that one. And then these daily philosophies become a habit and becomes a good habit and gives them a more positive outlook on life and a more positive look on themselves and their self-belief.
Mhm.
So, whether it's exercise, whether it's meditation, whatever that positive habit becomes, in my own personal journey, I always tell myself, commit to it for 30 days.
Yeah.
If it doesn't change your life after 30 days, then it's not impactful for you. It doesn't mean it's not going to be impactful for somebody else. Um, but I feel the same thing, whether it's drinking, smoking, eating fast food, pick a bad habit, right? If you do it routinely for 30 days, it becomes a habit, right? And
Yeah.
it's just as easy to commit yourself to good habits as it is to bad habits.
Absolutely, and I agree 100% with in terms of habit, and that's what the show is based off of, the your best morning routine, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. Give us one of the Brettisms that that we could. I know you said there's different ones on forgiveness and depending on what we're going through, but give us one that can resonate with the audience.
It's crazy. Everybody always asks me, what's my favorite breadism? And I say that's like asking me who's my favorite child,
That's
right?
why I didn't ask you that.
Because they all do. But I think one that resonates, and it comes off, I'm going to piggyback a little bit on habits, right? So one breadism is, the toll will always be collected. Pay now or pay later with interest, right? And that's one that helps me create good habits. And what I say by that is, if you create good habits and you pay the toll now, right? So I'll give two examples. One might be education, right? We all know how important education is. Well, if you pay the toll now and you dedicate yourself to your studies and your education and your higher education, you're going to have an easier path earlier in life,
Yeah.
right? Now, that doesn't mean that you can't have a successful life or a happy life if you don't seek higher education, right? It's just going to take you longer to get there. The toll collected is going to be higher. Another example I talk about in the book, Doctor, is healthy habits, healthy eating habits, right? I'd much rather, have that comfort food, that extra slice of pizza, the chocolate sundae, whatever. But I am going to have to pay a higher toll later in life as my health issues start to manifest, right? So, the toll's going to be collected. It's just a matter of, the earlier you pay it with good habits and self-discipline, the lower the toll is. If you kind of push off that toll being collected and saying, I'm not gonna to study hard now, and I'm not gonna sacrifice now as an athlete or healthy choices just as a non-athlete, you're going to pay a higher toll later, whether it manifests itself in diabetes, obesity, etc. Now you're at the doctor more. You can't, you may not live as long a healthy life and spend time with your grandkids or great grandkids. So that's a breadism that would tie into healthy habits. Another breadism that I get a lot of great feedback on is you can't trip over what's behind you, right? And in that breadism, I talk about we're all human, right? So the one thing we know we all have in common is we've all made mistakes. Whether it's a mistake with ourselves or a mistake in how we treated somebody else, we all have something we wish we didn't. And for a really healthy, positive outlook on life, you really have to forgive yourself or forgive others that maybe harmed you, right? What's in our past and what's behind us belongs there, right? Um, Yesterday is yesterday's job to worry about. Tomorrow's job to worry about. I need to focus and worry about today, right?
That's actually
And
biblical. That's biblical. It's in the Bible.
yeah,
Yeah, tomorrow will worry about itself.
100%. So, that's where the Bretisms, you can't trip over what's behind you. And I was actually with somebody and they had just got the book and they opened it up and they read that title of that chapter and tears started running down her eyes. And she shared with me a little bit about her personal journey and although she was young, she had a tough go of it in her early years and she says, I'm going to start with that chapter. Is that okay? And I said, it's your book. You can start wherever you want if that's the one that touches you. And she has since, reached out and said that really kind of forgiving others and herself for her past has really kind of opened up her future. So yeah, so those are just a couple that I lean on pretty heavy in my personal journey.
Yeah, thank you for sharing. So the title of the book is Bretism: Adopted, Borrowed, and Modified Philosophies for a Life with Less Anxiety and More Confidence. Share with us some of the saying and life lessons from the book that have actually helped boost confidence and reduce anxiety.
Yeah, so I shared a couple of them. One of the other ones is that which we tolerate, we allow to repeat. So I lean on that a lot, whether it was raising my kids or managing people in a leadership role, right? And when you talk about confidence, confidence often comes with how we allow others to treat us
Yeah.
and actions that we tolerate and others will repeat themselves. And when we say, hey, I don't appreciate that, or I'm not going to tolerate that behavior or those actions. And when you realize that the other person you're interacting with oftentimes doesn't even realize that their actions are inappropriate at the time or shouldn't be tolerated. Now, when it comes to raising kids, that's a whole different ballgame, right? Um, but kids want those guardrails as well. And when you're a leader of other people, they want to know what's tolerated and what won't be tolerated. So that's a philosophy that I've leaned on to really help, build confidence in myself. Another one I talk about, um, one of the chapters is, of course I love myself. If I didn't, I would change.
Yeah.
And oftentimes when I say that to people, their initial reaction is, wow, this guy's really full of himself, right? And when I explain to them, that if you don't really love yourself and the person that you've become at this, I'm not saying I'm perfect. I'm still on my journey, right? I'm learning from people, you know, whether it's, the best morning routine ever podcast and your other guests that you've had on and things that you've shared, but I'm constantly looking and learning, throughout my journey because, until I'm happy with who I am, I can't give my best self and appreciate and build up others. So I'm a big believer on focusing on being my best, healthiest self so I can give everything I have to others to help lift them up.
Yeah.
And those are things that have really helped me with anxiety and confidence over the years that I better focus on who I am as a leader, as a person, as a fellow human being before I can bring others up. And this isn't a Bretisms, but I talk about this in the book. This life of ours is not a dress rehearsal, right? This is it. This is live, right? The mic's live, the audience is live, everything's live.
Yeah.
And if we know that going into it, don't we owe it to ourselves to be the best version of ourselves that we can be? And part of that journey, and you've certainly dedicated your career to helping others and lifting others up, and thank you for that. Um, but part of that is when I talk to people about putting your own oxygen mask on first, and yes, I love myself. If I didn't, I would change. It comes across selfish, but I tell everybody if I don't have that selfishness to take care of being me and being proud of who I am, that enables me to give it all away and give it all to others around me so they can share in the joy of kind of reducing that anxiety and building their confidence. And then they in turn can help those around them in their circles live their best life and be the best person they can be.
Yeah, and as a leader and leaders of businesses and startups, you have to take in that put on your mask first. You have to take care of yourself so you can show up for the people in your life, for your team, for your customers, and that's pivotal. And that's really one of our taglines. How do you get up, dress up, and show up? And that alludes
Right.
to it quite beautifully. And so let's transition over to your morning routine. How do you get up, dress up, and show up? What's your morning routine like? What are some of the principles that you apply that you've learned over the years that helps you to write multiple books simultaneously and to be there for your beautiful family, right? Your two sons, your wife, and to actually still inspire others.
Yeah, so my my morning routine, it is non-negotiable,
Yeah.
right? And I know that's something that you preach, and I hope your listeners, really take that to heart, that you've got to commit and it's non-negotiable. And my morning routine is the first hour of when I get out of bed. Right. So it is no phone, it is no email. I'm constantly preaching to people, do not start, your first thing should not be looking at your phone, should not be checking social media. Because, when you talk about even anxiety, whether it's a work email or a social media post, it can cause anxiety or anger or a negative emotion to start your day. So, you know, my morning routine is as I get up, and I need to, first, you know, I'll get something to eat, I get that nourishment, and then I go do an activity. So depending on the day, it might be a walk. Now, I'm personally not a treadmill person. I love nature. I love fresh air. I love being outside. So if I have the day, if I know tomorrow morning's a walking day for me, right? So I either have a walking day, a workout day, or a swimming day, right? And I know the day before what tomorrow is going to bring. So let's say it's a walking day. So I get up, I grab the dog, and I'm going for at least a 45-minute walk. And what's critical for me is no headphones,
Hmm.
no music, no anything. Now, unless you're listening to the Best Morning Routine Ever podcast, that's the only exception that I'll make in my routine. But I really find it important to be with yourself in your own thoughts and to get comfortable, because it's that inner voice that creates anxiety in ourselves, right? Anxiety is not created externally, it's created internally.
Yeah.
And once we get comfortable with managing that inner voice in ourselves and learning how to listen to it and trusting it, right? Trusting our gut and our inner voice. So I want no distractions. I want to hear the birds chirping. I want to hear a kid laughing in his backyard. I want to hear, somebody else, talking or being. I want to hear what nature and the world brings to me, and I want to hear my inner voice. And that's my morning routine. Then when I come back, right, I do an exhale, and also, one thing that I do also is I do my morning prayer, right? I get up and I start the day, right? And I thank God for the day, and I thank God for this opportunity. And I say, these are the things, God, that I hope to accomplish in others today. My morning routine and my morning prayer isn't about me and my blessings, right? I save that for the evening. My morning prayer is about let me shine light onto others and let me be an inspiration to others today. So then I come home and that's when I get my coffee and that's when I um, open up my emails and open up my work routine. And now I'm in a better position to give everything I have to others because I've kind of taken care of myself and gotten myself in the right mental space to take on the day. And that's my morning routine.
I love that. I love that so much. And I think Tony Robbins says if you can't make 10 minutes, then you don't have a life. If you cannot make time,
I love it. Yeah, for sure.
so it really is what you got to make the time for yourself. And it's best in the first thing in the morning because the willpower is so strong then
Yeah,
to actually execute, to actually set the time. And whatever you do in that morning, and what stood out for me is you stimulate the mind, right? You are very careful about what you take in. So you're meditating, you're praying, and then the nature piece of it, moving the body and getting the natural sounds in and just kind of focusing on the beauty around you, essentially.
of course.
It's what's around it. If we don't take the time to look, we miss it.
For sure. For
It's
sure.
and so it's really nice to see that you're an epitome of that. You live by it and you're successful because of it, and it's one of your successful habits.
Well, for you, I mean, doctor, you obviously get this and the name of your show gets it. I mean, if you once your morning routine to me makes or breaks your day. And the fact that you've dedicated a show to it is just it just puts a smile on my face. And thank you for what you do and how you do it.
Yeah, and it gets personal, right? Because then you're talking about before you get up and brushing your teeth, before you get out of bed, what is it that you do? And that's what's special about it because it really says a lot about who you are and how you set the tone for the rest of the day.
Yeah, and we talk about it in the book. We talk about that inner voice, and training it to see the positive. And you said it very well, see the beauty in the world, right? So one of the things I talk about in the book is when you look at a rose bush, right? Focus on the flowers, not the thorns.
Hmm.
Right. And how many people do we all know? And we all have examples of people that you show them something beautiful and they point out the thorns and you're going, oh, you don't see, no, focus. We see the thorns too. Right. But positive, successful people train their brains to look at the flowers and focus on the positive. And that's part of a morning routine.
Yeah, and it takes work.
Today I'm going to see the beauty. Anybody can point out the thorns, right? Today I'm going to focus on the beauty as you say over and over again.
It takes intention. You have to set the intention. And one way I see this example play out is when you give somebody a compliment, they don't know how to say thank you. That goes into confidence too. They don't know how to say thank you, but then they'll say, "Oh, that old thing," or
100%. You nailed it.
that speaks to the confidence level as opposed to saying thank you or you know what, you're right. And, just kind of owning that it's not default. It's default to be negative. It's default to have these automated negative thoughts. It's default to see the thorn. It is not the default to see the rose petal. It's not the default to say thank you and actually agree with somebody without being boastful or arrogant. It's like, why can't we just be that in the essence?
Correct. Very well said.
Yeah.
And there's another Brettisms I'll share with you real quick. Every positive has a negative, and the reverse is also true, right? So we can look at every situation and in the most dire situations, I can find a positive angle to it, right? And other folks can find the most positive situation and find a negative to it, right? It's about the habit and training yourself. Today I'm going to see the positive in every situation. And what happens is you become more positive and you start to appreciate yourself and who you become more, you're more giving to others. And it's so funny to watch. And I know, doctor, you see this so often, you know, how people start to treat you different. Then they start being more positive around you because they know, again, what's tolerated is repeated. if you don't tolerate negative people and negativism in your life, then people stop bringing it to you and they start bringing you positive. And then before they know it, they've turned themselves into a positive person and their life journey is more rewarding.
Yeah, I'm bursting out of the scene with excitement for that statement because we create our reality
Love it.
just that way, just by
Love it.
changing what's going on here. Jim Rohn says it, right? Change the way you see things and everything around you will change.
For sure.
So, because we're creators by nature, we're creating our everyday, we're creating our reality, we're creating who we attract, we're creating who we're surrounded with just because of that tolerance. You will not tolerate certain things. You will not, what's the word? You will not discuss it, or you will not fight for it.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm not going to indulge in it. Right. I'm not going to sort, and the one thing I think that's important is it's hard, right? I think people, your listeners, some of them are listening to us talk and I think somebody out there is going to think, well, it's easy for you guys, right? And I think it's important to acknowledge that it's not easy,
Mm-hmm.
that it's hard, that it's a daily commitment to live in the positive. And it's a daily commitment to see the beauty and the best in everybody around us. And it's part, not to keep going back to the name of your show, but it's part of your morning routine, right? That today I'm going to see the best and today I'm only going to allow positive thoughts into my head. And that's not to say that you don't acknowledge the negative or you don't prepare for the worst or you don't prepare for the negative. But, I think when people think, people have often said, well, you just kind of got lucky. You were born with a positive outlook.
Yeah.
I just want to clunk their heads together and go, I promise I wasn't. It's a daily struggle for me.
Yeah.
It's a daily commitment to me. And I think, and that again, with intention is why I wrote Bretisms with 30 chapters.
Yeah.
So it becomes an everyday morning routine. And just to share with you one quick, I got a note from a reader and when you asked me to be on your show, it was the first one that came to my head. And she said, Brett, your book is now part of my morning routine.
Yeah.
And every morning I read it with my coffee. And although she already read it, she, again, to go back to what I said earlier, she, depending on her needs of the day, she now knows what Bretism is going to be most impactful for her day to have that positive outlook.
You are a household name and a household brand already. Good for you, Brett.
Thank
That's
you.
amazing. As we wrap up, I'm taking too much of your time. Those daily routines and those affirmations are these intentions that you set up to realize how powerful the mind is, how we're creating everything that's happening to us. This morning, as I was writing in my journal at 4:30 this morning, one of my affirmation was, I am open and available for present, to receive present. I went to get gas, and from gas, I went to one of the grocery stores to pick up milk. One of the ladies stopped me and says, what size shoes do you wear? I was like, 8 or 9. She goes, I have a trunk full of shoes that I've been waiting to bless somebody with.
What? That's crazy.
She gave me 30 pairs of shoes. I showed her my affirmation. She started crying because
Yeah, you spoke it into existence. Love that.
present. I am available and open for present. You see how powerful your words are? We are create life is in the power of the tongue. The word says it.
Yes. And when you say your affirmations, or for me personally, when I pray out loud,
Mm-hmm.
right? Even on my walks. And sometimes people will be passing me going, is he on the phone? But I want it to be out there. I want to hear it, right, myself. And if somebody else hears it, that's okay too.
It gives life. It gives
It
life.
does.
You give
Well
it
said.
momentum. I can talk to you all day, Brett. Please tell us, where can we connect with you? Where can we find your book and all the great ratings that I've seen on Amazon? Tell us the links and we will find you and connect with you.
Yeah. So, I mean, there's Bretisms on Facebook, bretisms.com. And that's Brett with one T, Bretisms, bretisms.com. You can email me directly at bretisms@gmail.com. the books, Amazon, Barnes and Noble, a lot of local bookstores are carrying it now. I've actually even seen it. The publisher sent me a link from Poland and all the wordings in Polish. And I was like, I had to Google it to see what country it's in. So it's expanded internationally, which has been really exciting for me. Bretisms.com will take you to Barnes and Noble links or Amazon. Everybody's got Amazons. It's available for your Kindle or in paperback. I encourage everybody to pick it up. And if you enjoy it and you have any questions about it, I love answering emails from people that the book has touched. It's really humbling and an enjoyable part for me as an author.
So amazing. Fantastic. We will put those on the show notes. I do have to ask, it's been such a great conversation, stimulating conversation. Leave us with a Bretism. That
Yeah, I will. So I've already, kind of shared a few with you, but one of the ones, we talked a little bit about leadership and being a better person and a better neighbor and a better human being. One of my favorites is always take the blame and shed the credit. So when something good happens, I often say, I've enjoyed many successes in my life, but I've achieved none by myself. Right. So when you have the opportunity, shed the credit, shed the light on those around you that helped you succeed. And if you're part of a group and something went wrong, it's okay to stand up and say, I'll take the blame. Let's just move on to a solution. So shed the credit, share the spotlight with those around you, lift people up around you, and it'll come back to you 100 times.
amazing. Well said. I'm not even going to touch that. Bret, it's been such an honor to have you on the show. Thank you again for sharing your presence with us today.
Thank you, Dr. Lunita. It was my pleasure.
Amazing. Hope you enjoyed today's episode. Please comment and tell us what was your favorite part, your favorite habit that you are going to try out for yourself today. Comment below. If you haven't already, be sure to subscribe. Until next time, I will see you at the top of your best morning routine ever. Stay blessed.